will give you an overview of how to perform management review according to ISO 14001:2015. My name is Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗣𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀. I do quite a lot of ISO 14001 consulting and training, but also auditing as lead auditor. So today I'm going to share with you my thoughts about management review. My presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we'll have a 20-minute question and answer session. And if you have a question, you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask it during my presentation. Of course, I'll also answer all of your remaining questions during the Q&A session. We will later send you an email with a link to the recording of this webinar and to the list of articles mentioned, okay? Right, so management review is one of the most important contributions of an effective environmental management system to top management. It's a very transparent way of showing top management leadership. And management review is much more than a meeting. It is a complete process with inputs, several steps, and outputs. In this webinar, we will show you how to prepare, execute, and follow up on a management review. And this webinar is specifically designed for professionals involved in environmental management system, including management representatives and consultants. So let's see the agenda. Today, we'll discuss the following topics. First, we'll give an overview of the purpose of the management review. Why are we doing it? Then we'll check clause 9.3 requirements of the ISO 14001 standard. Then we will speak about management review as a process, not just a meeting. And afterwards, we look into the inputs. ISO 14001 is very prescriptive about the inputs. And then we will speak about the decisions and then move into the outputs of the management review. And finally, we'll present the main challenges of management review according to questions received by email before this webinar. So let's jump into the purpose, okay? So the Romans had a god named Janus, from whom the name January for the first month of the year originates. Janus was the god of bridges, gateways, and transitions, often depicted with a head bearing two faces. Now, I encourage organizations to view the management review as a symbolic bridge connecting the past, the present, and the future. So the management review is a kind of a Janus moment, okay? To check the transition, okay? Today, we assess both our current context and the gap between our actual and desired performance. And to understand how we arrived at this point, we reflect on our past decisions and the performance challenges we set for ourselves. Those decisions were made based on the knowledge available at that time. And by examining the differences between the past and today, we aim to extract lessons that will assist us in making better decisions for the future. Now, what is the purpose of a management review? So let's begin with the end in mind. Read what ISO 14001 says about management review outputs. It starts with something like, the outputs of the management review should include conclusions on the continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the environmental management system. So at the end of the management review, you want to be able to give your conclusion, your opinion about the continuing suitability, adequacy, and the effectiveness of the environmental management system. So look into the past. What can your organization learn from last year? Do you have an effective environmental management system? So does your EMS achieve its objectives? Do you have an adequate EMS? So does your EMS has all the necessary elements to function correctly? And do you have a suitable EMS? So does your EMS still fits the organization needs? Now, I always remember the management system definition. So about working to meet objectives aligned with a policy. So I leave you the link to an article called ensuring that environmental objectives are aligned with the company's strategic direction, okay, that you can read later. Another article that you can check later is how to measure the effectiveness of your EMS according to ISO 14001:2015. Now, let us distill the requirements from ISO 14001 clause 9.3. So, conducting reviews at planned intervals, keywords, allows for consistent tracking and comparison of environmental management system performance over time. So these helps identify trends, measure improvements, and detect issues early. Then comes prepare a set of inputs. So ensure relevant data like performance compliance, like risks, is available for informed decision making. Then you evaluate those inputs and discuss those inputs to perform decision making. So analyze data, identify trends, and make strategic decisions to improve the environmental management system. Then prepare a set of outputs, including conclusions, decisions, and actions. So define clear actions, responsibilities, and improvements based on the review, okay, based on the critical analysis. Then comes top management plays a critical role. So leadership ensures commitment, resource allocation, and alignment with business objectives. So a myth about management reviews is all senior management should be present at the annual meeting. Well, for a large organization, it is unlikely that all senior managers will be present at these meetings. However, the information should be made available for comments and decision-making when appropriate, okay? And the end, we have retain evidence of management review results. So maintain documented proof of reviews, of decisions, and actions for accountability and compliance. Now, I leave here two more links. You can check this article later. So what are the responsibilities of top management in the environmental management system according to ISO 14001? And another article is how to demonstrate leadership according to ISO 14001. So management review, the requirements. Now let's go about the schedule and the distribution of topics throughout the year. So two myths about management reviews are there must be one annual management review and management review should address all inputs in one meeting. Well, no, we may have more than one management review per year. I personally prefer that. And no, we may schedule different inputs into different management reviews throughout the year. Often, scheduling an annual management review where we attempt to cover everything in a brief time frame leads to superficial review and is often a recipe for failure. Instead, we can schedule the management review 4 times a year, okay, to align with each quarter. We can distribute various topics for each session and ensure that the EMS management cycle aligns with the business financial cycle. Without this alignment, the EMS management review is likely to end up as mere discussions because you may make fantastic decisions, but then there's no resources to apply those decisions. So some topics are reviewed at every meeting, okay? Others every 6 months, and some annually. A good practice is to conduct management reviews regularly, reinforcing their significance and ensuring continued focus on the effectiveness of the management system. By the way, attention, this is just an example, and the distribution of topics may not be the best for your own organization, okay? Now, after the schedule and the distribution of topics, let's see the management review as a process. So, normally people think about management review as a meeting. Well, management review is not a meeting. It's much more than a meeting. It's a whole process. So in a management review process, one can identify 4 stages: the preparation, before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting or follow-up. So preparation. At planned intervals, the organization must consider several inputs of information and data to evaluate the performance and effectiveness of the MS. So planned intervals mean that the time between the management review should be determined in advance, annual, quarterly, or monthly reviews. The plan can be changed to reflect circumstances, but it should always be looking forward, okay? So that way, top management can make relevant performance comparisons, okay? So inputs are related to requirements from several clauses of ISO 14001, including the status of actions identified during previous management reviews. So the input should be used to sense the situation. They should be analyzed. So that means we sort, classify, summarize, calculate, correlate, present, chart, or otherwise translate the original data into meaningful information for those who will evaluate. Okay, so we prepare those the information. Now, before the meeting time, if you think about meeting time is too expensive and should be used wisely. Use it for discussions and decisions, not for long presentations. So after preparation and before the meeting, an agenda should be prepared and sent to participants together with the input information. So participants should study the information before the meeting. So I call to this information, I can call the management review report, okay? Now comes what? During the meeting. So after reviewing input data, a management review meeting, gathering top management, should occur to discuss results, draw conclusions, make synthesis, and decide on a course of action. So decisions and discussions are based on accurate and relevant data, ensuring that conclusions and actions are grounded in reality. Now, there's an emphasis on constructive, open communication where different opinions are valued and feedback is actively thought and addressed. Now comes what? Now comes the after the meeting or follow-up. So develop and approve action plans to implement decisions. So we expect actions to be implemented, of course. In the next management reviews, we'll check the progress of the action plans and the results. And the organization should keep records. If you think about records are like the memory of the organization. So without records, organizations have no memory. And without memory, organizations can't learn. And by the way, this particular one is mandatory according to the standard. Now, I leave here two more links. A link to the article, The Importance of Management Review in the ISO 14001 process. And then another link is to the article, What is Evaluation of Compliance and How to Do It According to ISO 14001. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into this management review process. So each meeting with 4 moments. So the outputs of preparation are an agenda for the meeting and information about the topics already analyzed. So what I call the report, the management review report. Now, before the meeting, step number 2, the input evaluation is done, okay? Then comes the meeting. The meeting is to discuss, make conclusions, and make decisions. The output of the meeting is the management review meeting minutes. And during the follow-up, decisions must be translated into action plans, or studies that hopefully will be translated into action. So if you check clause 9.3, now this is important, okay? If you check clause 9.3, you will read, the management review shall include consideration of. Then comes the long list of inputs. Now, what is the meaning of consideration? Consideration does not necessarily mean that every input must lead to a decision or action. Instead, management must review and assess the relevance, significance, and impact of each input in the context of the organization's performance and continual improvement. Now, so failure to consider an input, so ignoring it completely, would be non-conformity. but simply presenting an input without necessarily making changes if no issues or opportunities are found is acceptable. So, in the report, we include information regarding every input and a statement about the need of changes. In the agenda, we only list the inputs that need changes, okay? So you don't need to go in during the meeting to check every input that is in clause 9.3, okay? So this makes things much more focused on what needs decisions. Now, let's prepare the management review inputs. So use ISO 14001 as an orientation to the main topics to cover with the inputs. So during the meeting, you only need to consider those that deserve attention, but all topics are included in the inputs in the report to management review, okay? Now, responsibility for compiling data analysis reports and agenda inclusion. So normally, the environmental management representative or an assigned team usually compiles the data analysis report. The report should be an important part of the meeting agenda, ensuring that relevant topics are discussed during the management review meeting. While addressing current issues, this review also considers the long-term strategy and objectives of the organization. Now, how to prepare for the management review? So, gather and analyze relevant data on environmental performance, compliance status, objectives, risks, and improvement initiatives. Review previous management review meeting minutes and action plans to assess progress. Prepare documentation related to audit findings, corrective actions, and continual improvement efforts. Ensure all stakeholders involved in environmental management are aware of their roles and responsibilities. And focus your management review or base your management review on facts. So learn to love the fact-based approach. Any management system review needs to be based on facts. So it is necessary to gather sufficient information and data to provide a sound basis for the review. The input should be that which is needed to make a decision on the effectiveness of the system. Now, don't just collect the data and make a tick in your management review input list. Be demanding, be curious, and search for learning. Remember, participants are not specialists. So here, the management review is not the place for details. Focus on the big picture. Focus on trends and patterns. The meeting is for making decisions. Management decisions, not technical decisions. So simplify your message. When you are trying to convey the big picture, it's important to simplify your message. Focus on the main idea and avoid getting bogged down in details. And use visual aids like diagrams, graphs, and charts to help illustrate your point. So this can be powerful tools for conveying complex idea in a simple and easy way, easy to understand way. And translate what you think are risks and opportunities into top management language. So show them the pain, actual or potential. So for example, money in terms of potential fines, money in terms of extra costs, money in terms of customers lost. Now, I leave you a link to an article that you can check later. So is the management representative still the best option to coordinate the environmental management system according to ISO 14001? And another one is this interesting text about what is lost in translation between management system people and top management. I know the article is about ISO 9001, but I can promise you that it is quite applicable to ISO 14001 too. So the name of the article is Bridging the Communications Gap with Management in the Context of ISO 9001. Now, you'll find this procedure and other necessary documents, so the procedure for the management review and other necessary documents in our ISO 14001 Premium Toolkit. Let me show you how it looks like. So, see here, where? It's here. Okay, so here we have the complete list of all the procedures, forms, guidelines for that are part of our ISO 14001 toolkit. Let's see this procedure for management review and the management review minutes, okay? So you have here the procedure for the management review. As you can see, this is a Word file, completely customized, full with advices and links to articles that can be useful for to fill the procedure. So again, we have here, I mentioned here what can be the management review methods, the management review input, additional management review, interesting, and review output. So the following way, so we present here the different ways that you can do the management review. So what can be the objective? Again, we have here the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Well, now we have the long list, okay, of management review inputs that are part of ISO 9001, ISO 14001, okay. And the mention here that you can do additional management reviews. So, for example, after major non-conformities, after change in legal and regulatory requirements or big changes. And then we have here about the review output. So the list, what you can have. So this is our procedure for the management review. And for recording the management review minutes, we have this. So we have here all the information. You can customize this, you can make this more suitable. So not losing this information, but you can make it in several parts. But you have here the items, the inputs, the outputs, the responsibles, deadlines, resources needed, and then here for checking the progress, okay, the status. Yeah, so let me come back here. So you can see the details of this toolkit here. So I leave here the link for the toolkit, okay. Now let's continue. So let's see an example of what can be prepared as part of the inputs to a management review. Okay, we start by reviewing the status of previous actions. Okay, the corrective actions implemented in the last reviews were successful. Okay, last quarter, okay, the environmental monitoring system was upgraded. Okay, now let's see the example of an input context. Okay, so a new legislation is coming. Government regulation reducing allowed solid air emission limits by 30%, effective in 2 years. Now, so this is what is coming. Now, after an analysis, we have a risk assessment. So if no action is taken, the company will be out of compliance 40% of the time, potentially leading to fines, reputational damage, and production shutdowns. Okay, so an example of what can be inputs to the management review, in this case related with compliance obligations and the context change. Now, here I leave an article on a topic that small medium enterprises working in Europe or with Europe have to consider in the management review. So what is CSRD, so Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the link to another article, what is ISO 14064 about the greenhouse emissions. Okay, now, so we have, let's see here, we have this changes in external and internal issues. Okay, now we provide more information. So compliance, performance, and environmental data. So current emission levels are trending near the current limit. Okay, the projections are that without changes, the company will not meet future regulations. So this example highlights proactive environmental management, a key principle of ISO 14001, and good business practice. Instead of waiting for problems to occur, the EMS manager is determining risks early and giving leadership time to make informed decisions, at least 2 years, okay? Now, inputs, another slide about the inputs to management review. So the company has a challenge, and the good environmental management system manager presents solutions, not just problems. So good EMS managers don't just say, hey, there's a problem. No, they bring options and recommendations. So this way, they engage leadership proactively. So top management needs time to review and decide. So early reporting allows strategic planning. So in this example, we have 3 options, okay? 3 options to tackle that challenge regarding solids in the air emissions. Now, we prepare the inputs. Now, we prepare a management review agenda. So communicate the date and venue, communicate who will attend. So good management reviews involve key stakeholders from various levels of the organization, encouraging diverse perspectives and comprehensive understanding. List agenda items and estimate the amount of time needed for each. Present agenda items as questions that must be answered. This way you present purposefully, not just going through the motions. And just try it, okay? Instead of just putting there the topic, present the topic as a question that must be answered. Really, try it. It's so different, yeah? The mood is so different. So this way, you, as I said, you present with a purpose, not just ticking your to-do list, okay? Provide links to where attendants can study the documentation prepared. Remember attendants that they must arrive at the meeting with their studies done. Time is too precious to be used to present information that could have been reviewed before. So this implies that the agenda and the information should be sent well before the management review. Identify who is responsible for leading each item. A well-prepared agenda sets the stage for a productive review. Without proper planning, meetings risk becoming long and unfocused rather than action-driven. Now, we have here a question from Vladimir. So Vladimir asked, who participates in the management review meeting? Well, according to ISO 14001 and good practices, the top management must participate in the management review meeting. At least one member of the top management, at least the member of the top management with more responsibility regarding ISO 14001. Additionally, it is a good practice to involve environmental management representatives, process owners or department heads, compliance and legal advisors, if relevant, internal audit and risk management personnel. You know, among these people or among these roles, they may be more relevant in some meetings than others, okay? The goal is to ensure that those responsible for implementation, performance, and strategic decisions are present, okay? So for example, the environmental management representative, it's important to be there, okay? It's strongly recommended because they coordinate the environmental management system. They prepare performance data and provide insights on environmental objectives, on compliance status, non-conformities, and improvement opportunities, okay? Now, another question is from Clint. Clint asked, who can deputize in the event of an absence of a usual ISO management team member in the event of an illness? I would say that, okay, this is more general than just who can deputize in the management review. You must think when you are implementing your management system, you must think on that topic. So you have someone that is doing a particular job, a particular role. In case of illness, who can substitute, who can deputize that person? So I include that information in the job description. I always remember a company I was working as a consultant, and in the day of the certification audit, the first day of the certification audit, the production manager was so nervous that she had to go to the hospital to have a child because she was pregnant and near the term. So, and the first, when this information was transmitted to the auditor, he said, okay, who is in charge of production, who is now the production manager? So, okay, don't forget that. So document roles and deputies in the environmental management system governance structure. Includes succession planning in the management system. Ensure deputies receive basic EMS and ISO 14001 awareness training, okay? Yeah. Now, remember that information regarding the solids in the air emission. Now, so we prepare the inputs, we have the agenda, and now we have management review for discussion and decision. So now it's time to move into the core of the management review, discussion and decision making. So a productive management review should focus on evaluating key information and making well-informed decisions. So here's how this process unfolds. So identify key issues and risks based on the inputs and determine what requires immediate attention. So key issues and risks, okay, risks and opportunities, okay? So determine what requires immediate attention. Weigh different options, review alternative solutions, considering feasibility, costs, and risks. And encourage informed decision-making. Management should base decisions on fact-based analysis, not assumptions. So a good management review meeting, like in this example, results in decisions and clear action items with assigned responsibilities and deadlines, ensuring accountability and follow-through. So it seems that this electrostatic precipitator upgrade is the best option, but we need more data. So action items, collect additional information, investigate possible government funding incentives, schedule a follow-up meeting to finalize the decision. Okay, we have responsibles and we have deadlines. Yeah, so it's clear what needs to be done, okay, for the follow-up or for the implementation and follow-up. Now prepare management review outputs and follow-up. So a good management review meeting focus on identifying opportunities for improvement and learning from both successes and failures. So record the outputs of the management review meeting by documenting key decisions, actions, and findings in a formal management review meeting minutes. These records should include a summary of discussions of the environmental management system's performance, compliance status, and any need for changes or improvement. Ensure it captures conclusions regarding resource needs, responsibilities for action items, and deadlines. The format should be clear and concise, allowing for easy reference and follow-up. So this documentation is crucial for internal tracking and compliance during audits. So include a conclusion statement, okay? The conclusion should summarize the findings and discussions of the management review meeting. It should indicate whether the EMS remains suitable, adequate, and effective. Sign off and approval. So obtain signatures or approvals from relevant management personnel to endorse the final conclusion documentation. So follow-up actions after management review. So develop detailed action plans for addressing identified improvement areas or necessary changes to enhance the environmental management system. And allocate resources. Assign responsibilities for each action item to specific individuals or departments. Set clear timelines and deadlines for completing action items. Regularly monitor progress on action items and review their implementation status in subsequent management review meetings. Remember, the true value of a management review lies in its outcomes. Documentation, follow-up, and accountability are critical to maintain an effective and compliant environmental management system. Now, many organizations treat the management review as a bureaucratic necessity. But when done right, it becomes a strategic discussion that drives improvement. So let me give you a few examples. So example number one, a medium-sized manufacturer, they noticed that waste disposal costs were rising steadily. So during the management review, this issue was flagged using performance indicators. Instead of just noting it, they set up a small cross-functional team to investigate. And 6 months later, they had reduced those costs by 30%, mainly by improving segregation and negotiating better disposal contracts. Example number two, service provider. Their management review includes a standing agenda item on upcoming legal and regulatory changes. As a result, they anticipated a major shift in environmental reporting requirements and adjusted their data collection systems in time. So during their third-party audit, this preparation was highlighted as a best practice. And the example number three, from annual to monthly. A company switched from one long annual review to shorter, focused monthly sessions. Each month, they tackle a different area: customer feedback, operational control, environmental compliance, etc. This helped keep management more engaged and improved responsiveness to emerging issues. The takeaway? Well, don't underestimate the value of reflection, followed by structured follow-up. Now, the last slide. Yeah, the last slide before the main challenges. Now, crimes against management review effectiveness. Yeah. So these are common mistakes I see in audits or consulting work. The compliance-only mindset. So some teams do it just to say they've done it, okay? There's no intention of using the review to actually drive change or improvement. Data dump, no analysis. So if the meeting is spent just presenting raw data instead of reviewing insights, you've lost the room. Yeah, people will be sleeping. Key data should be pre-analyzed. The meeting should focus on interpretation and decision-making. And no clear responsibilities. If no one owns the actions coming out of the review, they won't be done. Is that simple? And top management disengaged? Yeah, the presence of top management isn't enough. They need to be involved in the interpretation of the results and the making of decisions. And yeah, avoiding hard truth. I've seen organizations skip over bad news, poor compliance, recurring non-conformities, rising complaints. So if the review doesn't face these issues, it loses credibility. So encourage your team to ask, are we really using the management review to guide the system or just to report on it? So that single question can transform your next review. Okay, oh, sorry, let me see here, this one comes here. Okay, now let's go to the main challenges, okay? So based on the emails that I received before this webinar, these are the most challenging topics. Reviewing an integrated management system. So an integrated management system review should not be seen as an overwhelming task, but as an opportunity to align environmental performance with business objectives. The key is to ensure synergy across different standards, such as ISO 14001 and ISO 9001, by using a structured approach that identifies common elements like risk, objectives, and compliance obligations. Participants required and needed, so who must participate, who needs to participate, and why. Documenting the relevant outputs. Management review frequency. So determining the right frequency for management reviews depends on the complexity of your organization and the dynamic nature of environmental factors. Rather than viewing it as a rigid requirement, you can consider a flexible approach. Major reviews annually and focused interim reviews as needed. Now, I leave here a link to an article called How to Perform the Management Review for an ISO 45001, 14001, and 9001 integrated management system. And also I leave here the link to the webinar about how to integrate 9001 and 14001, okay? Now, let's go to the conclusions. So, a sound management review is essential to identify management system improvement opportunities and act upon resource needs, okay? So, don't forget, the management review aims to ensure continual improvement, identify opportunities for enhancement, and address any necessary changes or corrective actions to drive environmental performance and meet legal and other requirements. And to help you with all that, you can use �1100's ISO 14001 Premium Documentation Toolkit. So here's the link with more details. And I also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert. He'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any documents you'd like to see. So you have here the toolkit expert meeting link, okay? Now, let's go to the Q&A. But before that, so I'll leave you the link for our courses, the ISO 14001 Foundations course, so about the standard, the internal auditor course, the lead auditor course, okay? You can watch the videos of these courses for free. You don't need to pay nothing. You only need to pay if you want to get a certificate, if you want to do an exam. Okay, before we begin with the question and answer session, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about ISO 14001 directly. Just send me an email and I'll answer as quick as I can. And if you have to leave before this Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. Now, question from Brandon. Brandon asks, what do you do if your site has exhausted environmental improvements or if financial environmental improvements cannot be made? Well, I think there's always room for some improvement. It's difficult for me to accept that we can exhaust environmental improvements. What happens is that as we improve our management system performance, some topics that were not initially were not relevant may become relevant, okay? So some topics that were relevant at the beginning now are under control, now are no longer relevant, so we don't need to focus our attention on them. We only follow the performance, okay? No need for improvement there. And we will go into other topics that at the beginning were not so relevant, okay? But there's always room for improvement. BJ asked, would like to know about the life cycle impact of aspects in detail. So this is not specifically about ISO 14001 management review, but please check our free webinar, okay, ISO 14001 identification and evaluation of environmental aspects, because we developed there the life cycle impact, okay? And Raymond asked, I prepared the draft for the meeting at my company. We have integrated all 5 certifications held at the site in one meeting. Do you think that is a good idea, or would you recommend keeping it separate? Well, Raymond, as a rule of thumb, I prefer integrated management review meetings. However, sometimes separate reviews might be better. So if the systems are at different maturity levels, so if regulatory or customer requirements demand standalone reviews, or if the meeting becomes too long or dilutes focus, okay? But as a rule of thumb, I prefer integrated management reviews. Okay, so let's see, one more. Pyle asked, I need to prepare for a management review in August, and I have done any audits and just introduced a system of documents that apply to the organization, not ISO certified. Where do I start? Well, you can follow these steps. So collect available inputs, so environmental objectives, compliance status, incidents, stakeholder concerns, and performance data, even if informal, okay? Schedule internal audits. At least one internal audit should be done before the meeting to identify system gaps. Then review document control, confirm the new documentation is in place or is in use and understood. Involve top management, so they must lead the review and confirm the EMS suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness, and use the standard as checklist. So structure your review around ISO 14001, the inputs and outputs. So, and you're not too late, okay? So use this as your first structured evaluation and build from it, okay? It's like, if possible, don't think at the beginning in the standard. Think on what do you want to know about your system, the current status of the system, and where, and based on that, where it needs to go in the future. Okay, so more questions? No more questions? Okay, so there are no, let me see if I have your questions from LinkedIn or from YouTube. No, we don't have any questions there. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so there's no more questions. I think we can close our webinar. When I say this, normally one question appears when I'm already closing the webinar. Okay, so I think I've covered all your questions, so let's wrap up the webinar. Okay, so as I mentioned, this 1 hour webinar was intended to give you a general overview of the management review, not to go into a detailed discussion. For that, please take a look at our blogs. You can ask me anything about ISO 14001 directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all necessary links. Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey, so I will kindly ask you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You'll receive a link to the recording. And if you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short survey now, and the link to the presentation will be posted on your event page in a few minutes. That will be all. Thank you for your participation, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.